All right, we'll get started. So my name is Tiana and welcome. Today's session is giving a snapshot of the postgraduate courses in Applied Linguistics and TESOL, and will showcase the career options, explore future opportunities and pathways to various career trajectories. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respect to them and their culture and elders, past, present, and future. I'd now like to introduce both Associate Professor Peter Roger and Aggie Bodis to provide a quick overview of the courses offered here at Macquarie University. We'll then welcome 4 special guests, all of whom come from a diverse background and are here to offer their own experiences and advice in the industry. You'll also have the chance to answer your questions during the Q&A session. So just some quick housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the Q&A box to either be answered during the Q&A session or by our team via the chat feature. The session will be recorded, so if you miss anything, we'll be sharing with you after the event. And finally, if we do run out of time, don't worry, we have the opportunity to book a one-on-one personalised consultation to talk through your questions. All right, now I'll hand it over to Peter and Aggie.
Thank you very much, Tiana, and welcome to everyone. It's great to have you join us tonight. I'm going to be introducing just very briefly the courses that we have at the master's level in English language teaching, and then my colleague Aggie Bodis will tell us about the graduate certificate of TESOL, which is the course at the graduate certificate level that we have. The degrees that we offer in this particular area at Macquarie University are in the linguistics department, and they come under the umbrella of what's called applied linguistics. And I think it's important to talk initially about what applied linguistics is, because many people don't know. Basically, applied linguistics refers to applying language studies to understand and offer solutions to real-life problems. Now, in many cases, what we are doing when we apply language studies is we're looking at language teaching and learning, second and foreign language teaching and learning primarily. And so you can see the picture there on the right. We can see a language classroom. And this is where a lot of applied linguists work, because a lot of applied linguists work as English language teachers. But applied linguistics is actually broader than that. And on the left there, you can see one of the big tunneling devices that's used to tunnel under Sydney's roads and houses to build train tunnels, for example. And one of the people in that picture with the hard hat and the orange high visibility vests is actually a linguist. And her name's Heather Jackson, and she's a linguist who works with industry. And what she does is she does the community liaison work for large infrastructure projects in New South Wales. So that's another example of what an applied linguist might do. Macquarie University has a Master of Applied Linguistics and TESOL degree that's been ranked in the top 10 such programs internationally, and we're very proud of that. This was something done by the English Language Gazette earlier this year, where they ranked the programs that around the world in applied linguistics and TESOL. So I'd just like to tell you in a couple of minutes about the program that we have at Macquarie. Anyone can apply for this Master of Applied Linguistics and TESOL. All you need is a completed bachelor's degree and an interest in language and its use in human interaction. The master's degree takes sometimes 1 year to complete, sometimes 1.5 years, sometimes 2 years. And this depends on people's previous qualifications and experience. So some people come to us from a completely different field, and we welcome people who've come from another area entirely, because that enriches the discipline. And if they're coming with no experience and a degree in a different area, they would study for a total of 2 years full-time, or the equivalent part-time. Some people come to us having studied in a related area, and some people come having studied in a related area and having other qualifications and professional experience that are relevant. And they would study for 1 or 1.5 years, depending on the details of what they bring with them. So basically, we have courses to suit the people who are aspiring language teachers and want to get into the language teaching profession. We also have courses designed for people who are experienced language teachers and want to enhance their qualifications and take their career to the next level. And as I said before, not all applied linguists work in classrooms in language education. And so we have programs to suit people who are professionals in fields where an in-depth understanding of language and communication is important, and that's something that they would like to pursue. If you do a master's degree in this area at Macquarie University, you'll do a number of subjects. And rather than listing the subjects there, I thought I'd just put down a few big questions that you would grapple with during your studies. Things like, how are languages learned? Languages are learned by people, of course, but people have brains. So how do brains learn language? But how do people and humans learn language? That's one of our big focuses. What should a modern language classroom look like? Many of us have very traditional, kind of boring ideas of language classrooms, but the reality of modern, innovative language classrooms is very different, and that's something we talk about a lot. In fact, we ask, do we even need language classrooms? Because a lot of language learning these days occurs outside the classroom. How can I help learners to stay motivated if I'm a language teacher? How can I motivate myself if I'm a language learner? This is something that we look at in great detail during our different units in this particular course. What does language have to do with social justice? Sometimes people think of language as being grammar and pronunciation and vocabulary and things like that, very mechanical elements. But language is really much bigger than that when we look at it. And so we look at language at all different levels, including how it comes into issues of social justice and equality and the big world issues like that. And finally, we look at questions like, what does the bilingual brain do? So you can see, hopefully, that we're looking at language at a number of different levels, both at the society level, the level of the individual, the level of the classroom, and at the level of the brain. Finally, there are a number of different places one can study applied linguistics and TESOL. What would be the benefits of studying at Macquarie? One of the benefits is that we have a very flexible delivery program. So you can do your entire degree on campus or online, or a combination of both. And this is not something that's limited to the current COVID-19 era. We always offer things completely online, and we have done for many, many years. You can also study full-time or part-time, as slowly or as quickly as you want. Our degree is internationally relevant, and by that I mean we have over 1,000 graduates from our program, and as well as current students. And these people come from and are working in over 30 different countries around the world. Many of our staff also have experience teaching and researching in many parts of the world. And as I've mentioned before, the Applied Linguistics and TESOL course at Macquarie University is highly regarded. Our linguistics department is ranked number 28 internationally in the subject rankings, and the Applied Linguistics and TESOL program has been ranked by the EL Gazette, which is a professional publication for language teachers based in the UK. They've ranked it in the top 10 such programs in the world. So I'll now hand over to my colleague Aggie Bodis to talk a little bit about the Postgraduate Exploration Month as it relates to the Graduate Certificate in TESOL, which is our other qualification. Aggie.
Thank you, Peter. A warm welcome to everyone from me too. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about the Graduate Certificate of TESOL program, which I convened myself, which sits within the TESOL program itself. So it's also a pathway to the master's degree. So it first and foremost prepares you for teaching. Now, where can you teach with a TESOL qualification? I'm going to talk about Australia and also possibilities overseas, but you will see that this kind of distinction gets a bit fuzzy once we get to the end. So for example, in Australia, you can teach in a primary and high school sector if you're already a qualified teacher. You can become an EALD specialist teacher. You can also teach migrants in the adult migrant English program or other kind of vocational programs as well, and refugees. The news is now that it's just been announced that the eligibility hours for migrants to take part in these programs have been increased. So hopefully there will be more teaching involved in this sector too. And we've got the English language intensive courses for overseas students, which is called the ELICOT sector, which is in Australia, it's done in private colleges or universities. This means that universities themselves have these preparation classes for students coming from overseas. Now, internationally, this is what we call English as a foreign language teaching. If it's done in a country where English is not really the common language of communication, then you can teach in schools, universities, private institutions, companies. That's done for international companies. A lot of international companies have English as their common language of communication, so it's also called on-site training. You would be training accountants or HR people to communicate in English. And also there's the emerging sector of online teaching programs. So we've got some panelists today that once I've finished talking about our program, we've invited them from some of these areas and they are going to share their experience teaching and give you some tips about these sectors. So the Graduate Certificate of TESOL Program, first I'm going to talk to you about the program itself. It consists of 40 credit points. It is 4 units, core units that you need to take. One, well, 2 of them are more practical about language lesson planning and program planning, assessment, and language teaching methodologies. That's when you practice language teaching. There's a linguistics and language teaching aspect of it to learn about the language, and then the practical aspect of the practicum where you put all of these together and you do an on-site practicum. So you go out to an institution and do your practice teaching there and observations. Now, we do face-to-face and distance learning, and this means that we have classes on campus right now as well. And then the distance version we've done is, so you can have an option to do synchronous learning through Zoom sessions and asynchronous learning as well. This is done quite often because lots of students have already a job, they're teachers, for example, and they don't have a lot of time outside, or maybe they're not free during the hours when we meet, or they can't attend the campus face-to-face teaching. The Zoom sessions are really well attended from overseas. So we've got students in Japan, in Korea, some countries in Africa as well. We've got 2 students from Africa and they attend these sessions. So it's really good. As for the academic stuff, we're all experienced TESOL teachers and we're really active in research as well in the field. And we're really passionate about the field. Now, I'd also like to talk to you about employability because we have put a lot of emphasis on enhancing employability skills through the program. We enhance it and then there's a bit of practice involved in the practicum part. Now, we've done this through consultation with industry representatives. So we've talked to primary and high school sector. I've been in contact with head teachers at TAFEs, the managers in the ELICOS sector and EFL sector as well, and collected what the important employability skills that are needed for these students who finish with us. So why become an ESL or EFL teacher? You can get the chance to support migrants in Australia, which is a great experience, and get to know people living and experience a different culture overseas. Learn a new language as well if you end up teaching EFL in a different country. You can also learn, and this is really important, you can learn an essential lifelong and transferable skill, which is teaching, and it is really transferable to other parts, very important for other areas in your life as well, and you'll see that you can actually use all the underlying skills that you learn in teaching. You can grow through the interactions with different and diverse students, and you can also start a career path with many possibilities: assessment, materials design, school management, and some of the areas that Peter has mentioned as well. Now, I've got one more piece of information here. If you happen to be from primary or high school sector in Australia, that there's funding available through the Teach and Learn Scholarship if you're in New South Wales. And you can see that it's quite a generous scheme, and you will need to, so if you want to find this, you can just Google this, or you can, I guess you will have access to this, these slides as well. So just go to that site and find it. And you will need to scroll down to have a look at the ELD areas. And our TESOL programs are accredited to take part in this. So this is what I wanted to cover. Let me just unshare my slides. Stop sharing. And I'm going to start with the panel discussion now. And I'd like to invite the panelists to introduce themselves and say a bit about themselves. And then we've got some questions to them. So let's start with Janet. Could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
I'm an EALD teacher, and I've been an EALD teacher for about 36 years now. I've worked primarily in Sydney, where I've worked in about 7 different primary schools, from eastern suburbs right through to western suburbs. So most of the students that I've worked with have been new arrivals into Australia. Many of them are refugees, and then a good perhaps third of them were actually born here. So,
all right. Thank you, Janet.
I'm working at Lakemba and Belmore South primary schools.
Thank you very much. Bonnie, can I ask you to introduce yourself as well?
Hello everyone, my name is Bonnie. I am a TESOL student, and I've been working as an online ESL teacher, or rather English foreign language teacher, for about 2 years.
Thank you. Fiona, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself as well.
Hello everybody, my name is Fiona. I'm a language literacy and numeracy teacher, but I work completely with an ESL cohort. The people that I teach are mostly migrants, some refugees, and I've been teaching in this area for about 15 years.
Thank you. And finally, I'd like to invite Luke Thompson to introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm a ESL teacher. I work at the Macquarie University's English Language Centre, which is an ELICOS centre, as Aggie was talking about earlier. I also work in the Department of Linguistics, and I do a little bit of work at Macquarie University International College.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to ask the first question. I'd like to direct the first question to Janet. How can a TESOL degree benefit primary and high school teachers?
Most of the students that come into New South Wales, the vast majority of the EALD students, that is, actually settle in Sydney. So even if you aren't qualified, you're likely to be working in a school where there are children that have a language learning need. almost 82% of the students that come into New South Wales come to Sydney. So it's highly unlikely that you'll be working in a primary school or a high school that doesn't have those students. So if you have this additional qualification, it's another string to your bow. And apart from it being a possibility that you could slip into the position, you're more employable because the teachers that work in those schools have to teach those students how to read, write and speak in English. And the amount of EALD support that's provided may only be an hour a day. So if you've got that additional qualification, it'll make a significant difference to your employability.
Thank you. I had another question to you, Janet. What career pathways are there for ELD teachers?
There didn't used to be a great deal, but now, because of the nature of the kind of work that EALD teachers do, it tends to be much more in classrooms. So you could become an assistant principal. They also have now instructional leader positions, and often they're linked with literacy, and I've done both of those. I've been an acting principal, assistant principal and an instructional leader, but they also have, and did have in the past, advisor roles. So what used to be called a consultant and is now an advisor role, and they're coming back in. So a lot of the advisor roles actually require you to have a range of skills across literacy and language. So if you've got a TESOL qualification, that actually adds to your suite of, if you like, of knowledge. So it does make a difference if you can actually acknowledge that as a need.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janet. I'd like to turn to Bonnie now. My first question is, how did you get involved with online EFL teaching?
So a few months after finishing my law degree, I realized that I wanted to follow a different pathway. So I really thought about what I enjoy doing, and that's helping people. I also have a love for languages and cross-cultural communication. So I basically started to look online for jobs in the English teaching and tutoring field. And I came across different online companies that would be ready to employ me because I had a bachelor's degree. You do need some sort of TESOL certificate now for many online teaching companies, but back then I didn't. So that's the first thing I started to do to get some experience. And the other thing I did was I started to teach. I started to volunteer as a teaching assistant at TAFE. So that's how I started my career.
Thank you. So you're a student with us at the moment, right? Finishing the Graduate Certificate of TESOL Program.
Yeah.
How have your studies with us informed your work?
Yeah, so through the TESOL certificate, I was able to improve my pedagogic knowledge and skills. This was something I felt I was really lacking, considering the online training that I received was only very basic. In particular, the unit on planning and programming, as well as my practicum experience at TAFE, really helped me to learn how to design and adapt teaching materials according to my students' needs. So that's really good. That's really helped me. I also learned to better reflect on my teaching practice, which I'm really grateful for because after all, we're all still learning. Lastly, through the TESOL program, I'm really happy to say that we built a community of student teachers and colleagues, lecturers. I felt there was a lot of support, even though I was an external student. I was living in the country at the time, and yeah, this support is still ongoing, and I really value that, and I feel ready to take the next step in my career. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Bonnie. So I'm going to turn to Fiona now. Can you tell us a bit about your career path and what is needed to teach migrants in Australia?
Sure. So I started off with a Bachelor of Speech Pathology and decided that I wanted to move into ESL teaching. So originally I got a CELTA certificate, the Cambridge certificate, and that allowed me to teach conversation classes and to be contracted to some agencies such as GP Synergy, so I could teach pronunciation and fluency to doctors who wanted to register in Australia. And I could teach other short non-accredited courses. But what I found was that I wasn't getting any permanent or any work that was actually fairly stable. So I went to work for an RTO. But with the CELTA and my degree, all I could teach were the non-accredited courses. And there was less and less funding available for that, and it's moving more and more to the accredited courses. And so that's when I started looking at the postgraduate study, and I looked at the certificate or the masters, and I did end up doing the masters. But what that has enabled me to do, and when you're working for an RTO, a lot of the courses that we teach are certificate courses. They're vet courses, like a TAFE course. And so in order to be able to teach those courses, you do have to have the postgraduate TESOL. So I've been teaching primarily English course that has vocational focuses, job seeker courses, which are teaching writing, resume, that kind of thing. And also I teach in industry, so I might go to a factory, or I might go to the council or something, where the employees have identified that their workers need some aspect of English assistance, and so I'll go in and teach there. So that's my teaching pathway. And then a little while ago I branched out and have started writing assessments, and have actually so I write the assessment across our campuses at Macquarie, and I have to look after all the compliance to do with that, which there's quite a bit of in the vet sector. So, and then I do professional support for our teachers as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona. Can you tell us what you like about your work?
I think I love the students that we have, because they're mostly migrants. They've been here for a little while, but they're finding that they want to meet other people in the community more. They're wanting to get into work more. They're really highly motivated. So I have some, last year I was teaching a class where the students came an hour before I did, and they were just so motivated to get in and learn. They always do their homework. It's a dream class. So I love teaching the students. I love the fact that we're in community. We're right next to the school, we're right next to the shops. We kind of are a focus of community where I work. People come and the students all have their lunch together in the classroom, and they share all their food, not in COVID times, but in other times. So I love that. And I love the other aspect of my work, which is the assessment writing, because it's a bit like a giant puzzle trying to meet student needs and also government regulations, and that problem solving I kind of enjoy.
And really useful, I also say, yes. Thank you very much, Fiona.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to Luke. Could you outline your career path in TESOL? Where did you start teaching English?
Thanks. I started teaching overseas in Japan, and then that's where I sort of became interested in language, because I was a language learner and a teacher at the same time. When I came back, I did the Master of Applied Linguistics and TESOL course, and it was actually during that course when I did my practicum at the English Language Centre. That's when I sort of transitioned through that pathway. So that was it. I mean, I didn't really envision going back overseas, and then when I did that practicum, I realised that it was a really good fit, and they felt the same. So that's sort of where my career headed.
So thank you. What other pathways have opened up through this experience or through your studies at Macquarie Uni?
Okay, so I guess the other things that I've done have all sort of been around curriculum development and research into different curriculum initiatives that we developed at the Language Centre and at MUIC. Doing the applied linguistics component of the course has also sort of helped me to engage in research critically and sort of branch out and start doing my own research. So that's been really, really helpful as well.
Could you give us an example of the curriculum work that you've done?
Oh, okay, so some of the stuff that we've worked on is sort of introducing video work with the students so that they're actually producing videos and sort of taking ownership for where they are in the world and not just sort of being passive about where they are and sort of engaged in what they're doing. And so, yeah, that's, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We've heard a lot from different sectors of ESL and EFL teaching now. And we've got a few questions here in the Q&A that we could answer. Let me just see which ones. So there's a question here about that I can answer actually. Does the university arrange practical work placements for us? That's from Rachel. Yes, we can help you with that. Also, if you have a workplace, if you're a teacher who's already working at a school, then you can do your practicum at your school as well. Bonnie is just doing her practicum at the moment, and we've helped her arrange that placement as well. We've got a question, another question here. Other than become a teacher, any other occupation for us by Kippa?
I can answer that.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that good question. The question is, other than become a teacher, are there any other occupations? And the answer is yes. It's the other occupations that you might think about here probably wouldn't be things that you would see advertised in many cases, but there would be things that people do that either draw on what they've done before they've studied applied linguistics in TESOL, or what they go on to do after that. So what a lot of people do, for example, is that they come into applied linguistics and TESOL from another field. So they may have studied engineering before, they may have studied accounting, or they may have studied business administration or something like that. So for instance, somebody may have a background in business or background in business administration and be very interested in how communication happens in organizations and companies. And they may do a master's degree in applied linguistics and TESOL, and they may or may not go on and do a PhD even in that field. And then they may set themselves up as a consultant or running a business in doing communication advising for businesses, because they understand how language works and how communication works, and they can help break it down and teach it to people. But they also understand how businesses work, so they're kind of combining those two things. Another person may come from a law background, and they may say they may be interested in legal documents and plain language, and advising people on using plain language that's easily understandable. And if they've got a legal background or something else that relates to that kind of thing, that they may go into that sort of field. So often it's a kind of a create your own career field. And what a lot of people do is that they start off in language teaching, and they do that for a while, and then they look to either specialize in a particular area of language teaching, say curriculum development or testing and evaluation, something like that, or else they look to maybe teach English for specific purposes. Say if they've come from a medical or healthcare background, they may be working with people from that profession who need language skills, particularly English language skills in the Australian situation. So they kind of specialize in that particular area, and they draw on the other skills that they have, either from their previous occupation or from something that they've done later. So I hope that that helps a little bit with that question. If anyone would like to add on to that, please, any of the panel, please feel free to do so.
I do know of a couple of other positions. A lot of journalists often do aspects of the course because they actually want to understand how language works in order to write for certain newspapers and magazines. But also I know of somebody who's actually working in Zurich, and he's working in what they call knowledge translation, where he's taking English written programs that are written by people who don't actually speak English and making them actually more clearly written, more cohesive, if you like. So he's kind of like a proofreader of academic texts. and he's done a TESOL course as well. So he loves his work. He probably won't come back to Australia, I don't think.
This comes back to, sorry. This comes back to what I mentioned earlier, that it's a transferable skill. So you not only learn to teach, but you also learn how to grade your language, how to make your language more complex or simpler, right? Which is great for all sorts of, even in life, when you want to communicate with children, for example. Yes. Can we move on to the next question? And I think it leads really well into Rachel's question, where have graduates of the course gone off to work?
Graduates of the course. Well, like they've gone everywhere. They've so many different places. And could I just go back to the question that you were asked before about like work opportunities beyond just teaching? Because I mean, in teaching, there's the entire world really. But now there's some people who've actually gone back to the discipline that they might have studied before they did English teaching and sort of become language specialists within that area. So sort of looking at sort of content and language integrated learning, where I've got a friend who moved back, did a law degree, did English teaching, and is now back in the law department, sort of integrating language skills with content and working with other law professors and lecturers to make sure their students have got sort of getting the needs that they address that they have.
I just thought I'd also mention that we, at my workplace at Macquarie Community College, we mentor students through the practicum program, and we've employed 3 new graduates. So people come to work in the community after their practicum. Yeah.
Yes, so it's also, once you do your practicum, quite often you can stay where you've done it.
That's right.
So we have a question about the practicum. How long is the practicum experience? Also, could I do it in the school where I currently teach, by Michaela? Yes, you can do it at your school. And how long is it? It's a semester long. So 150 hours of learning experience. The actual placement, so there's preparation period of 7 weeks, and then it overlaps a bit with your placement. The placement involves 10 hours of observation and 10 hours of teaching, supervised teaching. So that's the requirement basically of the practicum. We have a question to Fiona. Can you talk through your experience with teaching migrants?
Sure. Generally speaking, please jump in and narrow the question if I'm not hitting the target. But I guess at the community college, pretty much all of the students that I teach are migrants with some refugees. They do need to be, in order to meet the parameters of our college, they do need to have permanent residency or citizenship to get subsidised courses, but they can pay for the courses alternate to that. The people that I teach have generally done the AMEP hours. When you first come into the country as a migrant, you're able to access some English through a program called AMEP, and you can access, I'm not sure, it used to be a limited number, but they literally have just in the last couple of weeks changed the parameters of that. I'm not quite sure what it is now, but it's longer and better. And once they've done that program, then often they will, migrants will seek programs that help them specifically focus on work, or maybe they feel that they're still not able to meet their needs in the community, so they want a bit more English in terms of increasing their English skills. So that's where our programs come in. So some of our work is we're funded just for work programs. It's only English that we teach, but it might be focused in English for aged care, or English for disability, or business, or computing, or something like that. So that's the way our courses are crafted, so that people are learning language in actual vocational contexts. Yes, I'm not sure whether there's much else to say. I mean, I love teaching migrants, and genuinely enjoyed. I've got many, many friends that I've made from the courses. And I'll just tell you a very quick anecdote, but bizarrely, I chopped my thumb with an axe, which of course meant I had to go to surgery. And when I woke up, one of my old students was the nurse at the bottom of my bed. And that was just the most amazing joy that, you know, I really feel like we actually get to help people progress in their life in their new country. So yeah, that's been a real joy.
As someone who's done migrant teaching as well, I have to say it's one I've probably taught in most of the context that I listed there, but it was the refugee teaching actually that was the most joyful in a way, because there's so much that you can give, and not just language, but also friendship, and then also all sorts of other help to the students. It's a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah.
That's where I'm currently doing my practicum. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Tomorrow's my last day actually, so nearly there.
All right. Thank you. So we have a question from Tristan. How would a BA student majoring in Spanish with no teaching or linguistics experience transition into this master's in terms of understanding coursework?
I can answer that if you like, Aggie. Yes, yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think you would transition very well, I would imagine. I think we start from the premise that people haven't studied linguistics before, so that we don't sort of expect that that's something that people would have done. But particularly if you've studied another language or something in a language-related field, I think you transition very well. Usually when people begin the master's degree, they begin with the foundational units, which are actually the units that overlap with the graduate certificate of TESOL. So they're the kind of the fundamental units of study, and so that kind of, I think, helps ease you into the master's degree. Of course, within those units, you'll find that there's a mixture of people in terms of experience, and some have got teaching experience and experience in the field, others haven't. But we certainly start people off right from the beginning. And then as you get further into the master's degree, I think you find that you would, having done those foundational units, you'd manage very well. So I don't think that would be a problem at all. We have students from all around the world, including a lot of domestic students from Australia, but also students from many different countries of the world. And it's not a degree course that's dominated by just one country of international students. We have international students from many, many different countries. So people are coming to it with very kind of different experiences. But I think one of the pleasures for me in teaching in the master's degree is that people share their experiences and they can talk about things relevant to language teaching and learning and how that happens in so many different countries in the world. And that helps everyone learn what goes on in the world, as well as those of us teaching it. So I don't think there would be any difficulty transitioning, and you don't need to come from a related field necessarily in order to do the master's degree.
Thank you, Peter. We have one more question here from Belinda. I'm interested in the graduate certificate program by distance education. Are the lectures pre-recorded? Is the coursework mainly readings and essays, exams? Needing to study whilst working part-time and juggling children? Okay, so that's a few questions here. We do have lectures pre-recorded, and we also have other tasks. So as you could see, if you remember the structure of the course, we've got various units, and quite a few of these units are very practical. So you need to practice your teaching, which involves some kind of, well, it depends whether you attend face-to-face, then you would be doing, yeah, you're not, yeah. So it might involve you recording yourself, practicing a bit of teaching, but there's also different kinds of tasks each week. you've got readings, you've got tasks for the planning and programming unit, which I convene. You have planning tasks, and you need to, and because you're a distant student, an external student, you have access to each other's responses. You can discuss things. You have assignments that are directly related to the outcomes of the units. So for planning and programming, you would need to not just write essays, but actually plan lessons. And for the teaching methodology, you would need to teach, or at least teach your peers or people around you. I think that's all. It's the course of mainly readings, essays, and exams. We have some new, some really innovative ways of assessing students as well. And as I said, it kind of relates to the employability skills, because we have found that if we do things that are going to be later needed for the students to find a job, for example, that's an advantage, of course. So for example, for the teaching methodology unit, the unit involves what's called micro-teaching. It means peer teaching. So we put students into groups and they practice, little bits of teaching each other, just whatever's on schedule that they need to practice. Now we've moved that online, so you can do it in class as well. But what we have done is we have moved it onto a platform where students can share their videos with each other and actually have a look at what they've done and give each other feedback. And they've learned how to give feedback to each other and self-evaluate as well. So we've written this up as a research paper, and it's being shared now. So it's a very innovative method there. But yeah, so we've got these kind of tasks there, not just boring essays.
I thought I might comment here because I was an external student, or I guess I still am for another day or so. So I thought it was very easy to navigate. And we had some Zoom sessions as well, which were optional. So if you couldn't attend the Zoom sessions, you could watch the pre-recorded lectures. And so that was really flexible. I always tried to attend the Zoom sessions though, because I felt like I learned the most through those. They're very interactive. I could speak to my lecturers. We were put into different sort of student rooms, breakout rooms, where I could do group work with other students as well. So I think, yeah, with the invention of Zoom and other platforms like that, I think it's getting easier to do study externally. Of course, there were due dates for assignments and things, but other than that, really everything's in your control as to when you want to study and for how long and so on. Hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. We have one more question here that's very important. With international borders currently closed, how would we go about finding opportunities to teach internationally? This is Flora's question. Well, we still get work. I just got an email, for example, from a company in Japan asking for graduates to help. So I'm not sure when or how that's going to happen, but I guess there's options to teach online as well. And there's quite a few of our current graduates who are finishing their practicum now are actually looking for jobs online.
I think Bonnie may be able to tell us a
Exactly.
bit about online options during the current border closures.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of online teaching companies in China and also other Asian countries. Even if you just Google ESL teaching online China, for example, there will be a whole list of them. I could never apply to all of them. So I think in that way, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. In saying that, I've sort of heard a bit of hearsay people saying that there's a little less opportunity because more teachers are starting to transfer to online teaching. But I know people who have now changed from teaching in person to teaching online, and everyone I know who has applied has been successful. I think there's enough companies and enough students overseas looking for ESL teachers. So yeah, I still think there's quite a lot of opportunities.
If I can just add something, like from the Ellicott Centre, they've been like very flexible and had to restructure in a lot of ways. And some of the centres have actually sort of thought about how they can actually get new students and have actually connecting with universities overseas and actually creating smaller groups. So it's not just the change from face-to-face to online, but the change in the structure at the administrative level. It's still it's still going along. It's just in a very different sort of structure.
You mentioned universities. I taught a class in a Chinese school once, so there's also different options as to what sort of teaching you do online. So I've done one-on-one teaching, one-on-4, 1-on-6, and then I've done 1-on-20. So yeah, in that way, that's also quite good. There's a few options.
Can I just say that we're all teaching online as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much face-to-face in RTOs at the moment. It's all online.
Yep. Well, that's actually all we have time for. So thank you very much for everyone joining us today, and a massive thank you to the panelists as well. I know for myself as a linguistics student, I did find it very helpful with some of the questions and everything shared today. And if you have any more questions, you can book your one-on-one personal consultation online as well. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good night, everyone.